Welcome to DealFlow podcast, where I get to sit down with some of the most creative and innovative minds in the tech industry. Today, I sit down with Dino, the co-founder of Fluent, an Ethereum L2 that calls itself the most expressive blockchain. It's not just another L2, this is a whole entire ecosystem that Dino is building out. And for any founders out there that's building infrastructure or starting a new community, this one is definitely for you. We dive in to learn exactly how he has evolved the Blended Builders Club into a whole entire network that each extends from each other. Super excited to learn what kind of mindset it takes to build a Web3 company, and we're going to dive into all of the nitty-gritty questions with Dino today. Jump along and we will see where the conversation goes. So let's get into it. Thank you so much, Dino, for joining me today on DealFlow podcast. It's a pleasure to sit down with you, and you have been burning the candle at both ends, building, shipping your ecosystem. I'm really excited to jump into today's conversation around you there as the co-founder for a L2 in the Ethereum ecosystem that's just creating a blended environment for all developers, all builders to come in and actually incubating your own ecosystem, which I think is really fascinating. A nice approach to solving the true user problem that we do have in crypto. And you're also notorious for saying we don't have a user problem, we have an app problem. So that's what I'm excited to dive into today. And yeah, thanks for joining me so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Cool. So what is the problem that you are solving there? You've said that we have an app problem and you are a builder over there. So just give a little bit of an introduction around yourself and tell us what problem are you trying to solve?
Yeah, no, happy to. So I'm Dino, one of the co-founders of Fluent. As you mentioned, Fluent's an Ethereum L2, as we call it, the most expressive blockchain, which I can get into in a moment. The app problem that that I was probably alluding to in my tweets were very simple. Like, I don't think we have that many apps in crypto yet that are really, really great, right? I mean, like, there are some that are great. Some core DeFi stuff that like works really well, but besides that, I just don't think where we need to be yet to attract like many more users into the space. I mean, the reality is that I think most people are not as not as drawn to some of like the core like financial mechanics that us crypto natives are. So I do think that if we wanted to onboard many more people, I think we need to either like plug those mechanics more gracefully into products that people love, or develop more kind of like consumer friendly mechanics that that people want to interact with directly, or that actually reframe some of like the financial markets into like a more fun light.
That's exciting.
Which I can get into. I get into Fluent.
Yeah.
I get into all that.
But so for example, so there's the App Store on iOS at the moment, and the infrastructure that these apps, so obviously a builder has built an app and they've launched it on the App Store, right? And it's using infrastructure from some of the giant tech webs. Is that, how does the current process for like, where if I was a developer creating an app for a fitness tracking or something like that, whatever it might be, there's lots of little micro apps, and I launch it on the App Store. So what is the difference that I would come and launch it on Fluent?
So I think it really depends, right? I definitely not an advocate for people just like taking what otherwise wouldn't be on chain and moving it on chain. So I do think that it really depends on like what you're trying to accomplish and what the crypto part of it is uniquely good for. That said, I do think that it's good for a surprising number of things that I feel like are very underexplored, right? Adding different types of fun mechanics using these cool primitives that we have in crypto is something that people have started to experiment with, but I think we can go much further. Just as an example, and kind of veering off your example a little bit, but just one that I think could resonate as well, right? You have you have things like Time Fund. I don't know if you're aware of Time Fund. They actually just recently pivoted, but I did happen to really like their application. I think they maybe felt that the timing of the market was a little bit wrong. But as far as just getting juices flowing in people's minds, right? Like the ability to take your like effectively your time and like create like an open, free, permissionless global like market from it, and then like plug that into different products, right? You can end up with experiences where um, your regular like calendar experience ends up being integrated with financial rails. You don't, maybe you're a consultant, you don't have to kind of like, um, measure every second of your time in some manual way, but rather like when somebody books something on your calendar, it's automatically priced based on the demand and supply, and it's just like all automated like stuff under the covers, and you just don't have to like think about it. Like automating the supply and demand curves of like your time is like a very interesting thing, especially when you get into more of like a fluid working environment that I feel like we're already kind of in. You see people who are, like kind of solo entrepreneurs, like doing quite a number of things, or, maybe somebody is just like the best storyteller in the world and they're doing that for like 5 different projects across 5 different industries. You know what I mean? So like when you get into this like increasingly more like dynamic working style, I think that kind of bringing the dynamic payment rails along the way and elegantly weaving that into consumer experiences or working experiences, like I think could be pretty cool. So as just, yeah, kind of a random example, but I just think that there's a lot of stuff like that are really underexplored.
Yeah, that's opening up a whole entire new economy for app developers and builders, right? So it's allowing them to nurture their own economics within their community and incentivize their community, reward their community, grow their community, and bringing it back around to sort of that network effect where you are the power of your network, right? And the stronger that you can align the relationships within your network, you guys can all sort of scratch each other's backs or give each other handshakes, or you know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
I fulfill this part of the jigsaw puzzle, and I need these other parts to thrive, work, grow. And if we can collaborate in a smaller environment, we can all sort of execute together and all win together. Is that sort of what you're trying to nurture there at being the most expressive blockchain? Is that what it means to be an expressive blockchain?
No, so there's kind of a couple different kind of topics in there, right, which we can explore. So the nurturing that like more dynamic collaboration, I think, can be um just part of like a broader bucket of like creator capital markets, which we can get into, but a little bit separate from the core like expressivity of this blockchain environment. So when we say the most expressive blockchain, what do we mean by that?
Mm.
Right now the industry has two pretty like siloed standards, and it's like the EVM, sorry, at least from like a developer programming perspective, there's like the EVM world and the SVM world. The EVM world has a bunch of different blockchains that are all kind of like, kind of stamped out with the EVM standard like Ethereum, and then SVM world's really just Solana. And so these are both standards that are getting really popular. Obviously, both Ethereum and Solana by themselves are very popular. But it's still like, which is fine for now. But then when you zoom out on like a 5, 10, 15 year time scale, we don't think that like the end state of blockchain execution will be limited to those two environments. And so we basically came along and said, okay, how can we create an environment that's very, very expressive, so sufficiently flexible that we can both meet the market where it is today by supporting EVM and SVM applications on Fluent, but then also have this environment be extensible, for whatever comes next. Maybe nothing comes next and it's just EVM and SVM. Great. There's still no other blockchain that can support both of those applications in one place. But we also wanted to stay flexible in case some other VM comes along, whether it's an existing one that gets popular or a new one, and we can just incorporate that into Fluent, and then also other types of languages, right? I mean, you have in the current world, you basically Solidity with the EVM, and then you have Rust with the SVM. But at the same time, like as more developers come into the space, again, over like a 5-10 year time scale, who knows what languages they're going to gravitate towards, and this expressivity of Fluent allows for not only whatever people to use whatever VMs they want, but also for people to use whatever languages they want. And there's kind of WASM powering that at the core. We don't have to get into the technical nuances of it, but the TLDR is people should be able to use whatever tools they want to build apps on chain.
And why is it important, or what benefits does it actually bring to be able to blend sort of the Ethereum ecosystem with Solana ecosystem? Like, why has this not been already done?
It's an interesting like way you frame the question, because there's like the technical part of it, and then there's also the social part of it when you say like blend the ecosystems, which is actually interesting. From a technical perspective, I think, well, a little bit similar to what I was saying earlier when it comes to your using whatever tool, programming language, VM you like. When you think about blockchains as they get more mainstream, right? What happens? You're working with not an individual dev, but you're working with a team of devs, perhaps at a company. And those devs happen to have different skill sets. So you might have one dev that's knows Solidity, you might have one dev that knows Rust, you might have the reason that the dev might know Solidity is because they do less like performance sensitive things. And then the dev who knows Rust is maybe like more of a backend guy. And he's working on like parts of a broader application that are more compute intensive and therefore need to be used deployed in code that like runs more efficiently, cheaply. And so it gets nuanced, and I know crypto in general doesn't really like nuance, so we don't really get it too into this that often. But I think it starts to become very just pragmatic for a company as they're starting to come in and build on chain to take the resources that they already have on one of their application teams, and just make the best use of those resources. So that's one way to think about it. And then you mentioned, I think, another part of that. The cultural part of it. So the cultural part of it's ecosystem interesting. So blending together Ethereum and Solana culture, I feel like is something that's been long overdue. I think Ethereum brought something really powerful to the mix, which is this ethos, right? I mean, like, I think that's, there's a reason there's such like strong, even sometimes maximalism in Ethereum circles. It's because like it was so ideological. It came on and they're like, the Ethereum culture like so strongly believes in maintaining like permissionless systems. And so that's like a really, really powerful thing. And then, not to say the Solana ecosystem doesn't, but the Solana ecosystem, I think, brings something new to the table, which is pragmatism. Like, these guys are very, very, I'll call it like product centric. I mean, you could just see it back even before Solana got like big or popular, right? Like, if you just kind of listen to Tolly or Murd or some of the people from the early days talk about Solana, like, you just tell that they bring this level of like, I'll say like tenacity and like product centrism from more of a San Francisco style of person. They're cut a little bit more from that like like cloud engineering type cloth. And so I feel like when you bring these things together, what do you get? Like, you get the maintenance of that like ideological underpinning where that makes crypto useful, but then you also get product taste and product centrism, which actually lets you build things that real people like. And I think that's why like the Solana culture is fostered um, honestly more, I'll say, like consumer friendly applications so far, just because they have that culture. I mean, it's manifested so far in just like meme stuff, but like in the grand scheme of things, like over the next 5 to 10 years, I do think that culture that happens to appeal to more like product centric developers who build more like consumer centric applications, I think will pay off. And I think that Fluent can adapt and blend together both of those cultures.
So why has nobody already done this? Or are you guys the first ones to do this? Or have other people tried and failed? Like, what's the current outlook like?
Yeah, it's a good question. So people, um, most of the time when something ends up working well, it's because it's been tried before in some number of times, and there are a bunch of different dynamics, some in your control, some out of your control, right? Like some market forces, some like tech readiness. I mean, are those things in your control? I mean, those things are out of your control for sure, but then there's also like the right team and like how that team decides to take something to market. So there's both all those things together, to say that yes, people have tried this before. Like several different aspects of what we're doing, people have tried before, right? Like I think dating back to early days of blockchain, people realized that like WebAssembly, WASM as this like base thing to build on, like to build a VM around, was a good idea. Like people have tried that plenty. Like everyone from Polkadot to Near to like the Cosmos ecosystem. Like a lot of people made these WASM centric things. And I think that so some of that has been tried before, and we've learned a lot from it. Then this idea of bringing together multiple different VMs has also been tried before a number of times. So you might have actually maybe you haven't heard the term multi VM. The reason you haven't is because it hasn't really caught on. And people have tried it before, where they basically took two different VMs. It depends like what those VMs are. Depends on the particular like project, but they try to put these VMs together. And I think just even that term kind of underscores where they went wrong. Like if you're trying to take two things that like aren't really supposed to fit together and fit them together, it often ends up being, you can intuit that it ends up being clunky. And that's really what happened. Like if you think about it, and again, not to get too into like the technical weeds, but if you take two different VMs and you put them together, and you like, it's going to be less efficient than if you design like one VM to be able to support more things. Like if you're trying to ZK prove it, if you're trying to, it's just going to be more costly, less performant, more costly, and just clunkier of an experience altogether. You get a little bit more towards what a Frankenstein versus something built from first principles to accomplish that goal. So I think and we've learned from that, right? Like, we've learned a ton. Like I don't think we probably would have made a lot of the same mistakes, and if we weren't able to learn from people who have tried things before. So this isn't a knock, it's more of like we commend everybody who's tried it before. And then of course just like market timing and technical timing plays a big factor, right? Like I think that you're able to, especially in an open source world, you're able to take things that work and iterate on it, and of course like the market can bear different types of products at different periods of time. So yeah, long-winded way of saying people have definitely tried it before, but I think we really built the system with those design goals just from the ground up.
Yeah, so to create your own moat around building an L2 in what some people say is a very saturated environment, some people even say, do we need another L2? What is your argument back to these people? I'm sure you would have heard that one many times, so I want to hear what you have to say to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the question is valid because I know that's coming from hearing it often in the market. So it's like it's I get you get asked it plenty. But I do think the question itself is strange because um, why do you need another execution environment or chain? Well, to me, the fact that we don't have great applications, or at least just not enough great applications in crypto, just shows that you do need more up at bats, like frankly. And whether that those at bats are manifested as like more apps on a given chain, or whether they're more apps on a new general purpose chain, or they're more app chains, like it really doesn't matter. You just need more at bats. And I do think that as an industry, and I do think that a new chain versus just new apps on an existing chain gives you extra room in the design space. I mean, most people just oversimplify it, as crypto Twitter loves to do, um, and looks at it as like app specific or general purpose. Like these things aren't that black and white, right? And so, and it's also not as black and white. Looking at that as just a pure technical. Through a pure technical lens, right? So when you have a new chain, like what do you actually get? You get like a much broader design space. You get to design like how it technically works, like the part of the conversation we just had. There's other parts to it, like, right? There's like a different way you govern the thing. There's different economics involved. There's different like social constructions, right? When you think about it, like Ethereum and Solana are both general purpose chains, but Ethereum's kind of turning out to be like the lending stablecoin thing, and then Solana's kind of turning out to be like the trading thing. Why? Is it just the performance differences or the tech? No, I think there's a whole bunch of like social design constraints that come into effect there that make things more, I'll say, like vertical use case industry specific over other chains. And I think the realization over the past few years and the success of Hyperliquid is that you can actually have a general purpose chain that still has like a vertical focus. It's like technically general purpose, socially specific, in some sense. And so my point is just to say that I think when you have a new chain, we need more swings at the bat for applications, and having a new chain to support those, I think just gives you like a broader design space to work with.
And you're also innovating within the space by combining the two ecosystems and allowing a new builder who and building teams to have more flexibility within their own teams to be able to build and launch rapidly. And I know that also you're like building out your own ecosystem. So do you want to go into that like a little bit more? Like you just mentioned, just to build the killer app, to build the unicorn app, it takes a lot. You know, you got to grow out the community. You've got to get out the tech. You've got to get out the distribution. You got to do the marketing. You got to get the right team. You got to do so many different things. So for you, they're building an app. I guess you could call it a home for apps or infrastructure for all apps. What does a killer app, or what kind of app would you like to see built on Fluent?
So we don't as much focus on the types of apps per se. It's more just, I would say it's more about the types of builders. And so we have this notion of the blended builders club, and you can roughly think of it today as an accelerator. We have a much broader vision for it, but let's just say today it's an accelerator. That's fine. Another way you can think about it as the like crypto Navy SEALs. So obviously like people know like the Navy SEALs as being this like really intense like US like
Thanks to
organization. Thanks to Goggin, exactly. So people know about the Navy SEALs, and if you know about the Navy SEALs, you know about like Navy SEALs training, and like that's kind of the way we look at when people step into the Blended Builders Club. So we're like as we're taking this like highly opinionated approach where we'll like recruit teams that we think are really capable. I mean, it's some combination of maybe like the way they think about the problem that they're solving, like their integrity as a team, like the way like how big we think that opportunity could be, and we kind of approach it like our own little IC process, like we're an investment firm. But we have kind of like different people on the team in their own functional areas who get together, and we're like, all right, are we betting on these guys? And the betting doesn't even have to be financial, right? It's not even like, although we have put a couple a couple of checks into the companies people are starting if they're fully like dedicated to Fluent, but it's really not about that. And most of the applications we have not given any dollars to, but it's actually rather a bet on our human resources and backing them. So we will be really opinionated, and we'll start talking to a team. We'll usually just get into the trenches of them, frankly, and say like, hey, how can what's your biggest priority right now? Like, what's your biggest problem or blocker? And we just try to help. And then as that relationship develops organically, we evaluate them for this Blended Builders Club. Like I said, the Crypto Navy SEALs, and the social contract is very much with that in mind. It's like, hey, if you step into this, if you're bought in, you're gonna get your ass kicked in a good way. Like I think we have like we're the fortune of having built a really good team, and that team does just serve as an extension to each of those teams across growth, comms, BD, even like company and team formation, fundraising, etc. And so
but anyway, so the Blended Builders Club is sort of your incubation center there, where you are hand-picking projects to come in. So how does, for example, I think I've got a fantastic project. I think that Fluent might be the right ecosystem for me to launch into. How do I get in front of you or apply, and how does that selection process look like? Do you guys are like, you'll collaborate, or is it like kind of like Y Combinator kind of thing, like that kind of a process, or how does it go?
So it's a good question. I'm not super familiar with YC's process, but yeah, you can think of it in probably a similar way, maybe like less of a formal process. I mentioned like the IC part, but that kind of comes later. Like I think the way it starts is not with just a form submission. I mean, it starts with just getting in touch with us and getting to know the Fluent Labs team. I mean, the answer to how is, it's very easy. We're very accessible. I think I'm more terminally online than any like sane person should. And you can ping me on Twitter publicly, DM me, like all that's open, right? It's easy. And same with most people on the team, especially our like, more like ecosystem and growth and front facing people. Super accessible. You can also jump into the Discord and reach out there. I mean, we'll find like if you're, that's the thing, like our eyes are like peeled open, like, and actively looking for people who could be a good fit, whether it's to contribute on building apps, or whether it's more of a like a community contributor who could be a good fit for those app teams. Like, we've actually done that before. We've found like talented people in the community and hired them ourselves, or actually like placed them in, well, not placed them, but like recommended them, I guess, um, to teams in the BBC. So it's a very like high touch approach, where like if you're an app builder and you want to be part of this blended builders club, which goes into the next part of your question, you get in touch with us and we just start working together. Like, it's not this like a formal thing. I don't know. Again, I don't know how YC works, but you don't submit a form. You just start talking to us. You can usually you can usually get a feel for if people are real. Like, you can usually get a sense just from a few conversations if a person is like passionate about something, like if they're really in it to like solve some problem. Like, they might have no idea what they're talking about from like a solution side yet, and that's okay, but you might hear them just obsessing about a certain problem to solve that also shows some level of knowledge and competence, and you're like, okay, I should look into that. And then we start talking to them more, and you start working together, and then it's one of those things that just falls together naturally, right? Like, almost like a good relationship. You're just like, all right, well, that just kind of happened because we just clicked. I don't know. You can't really like explain it. No one fills out a form. Well, I guess you
But
kind
in
of do on
saying
the
that,
dating apps,
like,
but anyway.
yeah, I guess so. But in saying that, so how do you decide whether this person that you start to talking with actually has a moat around their product or their service or what they're saying? Because you seem like that's how you can be different and win market share
Mhm.
if you have a moat, even if it's thin. Like, you need to have that edge. You need
Yeah.
to have, whether it's your network, your tech. Your tech, I don't really think is much of a moat anymore. You need something more. It needs to be like, why are you the right person to solve this? So, like, what do you look for in projects that you bring on into that sort of the BBC club that are moats? They can be
It's a
rejected as well.
it's a great question. I mean, moats is one way to think about it. I like to think about it as superpowers, right? And we think about it the
Yeah.
same way for hiring people internally as we do for recruiting and accepting people into the Blended Builders Club, right? So I think you need to keep a sharp eye out for people who have certain superpowers, and whether those superpowers can be mapped to needs in the market, whether that market is your company and like what you're trying to accomplish, or whether the needs in the market is more of like the public market, i.e., are they going to build a product for it? Um, that's really, I know it maybe sounds really simple, but like that's really it. Like, I mean, I think you need to, um, if you can identify what somebody is really like 10x at, I think you can that makes up for a lot of other things. Like, I mean, if they don't have like a current, I'll say, like, moat to their product in its current instantiation, you know what? Like, you can tweak a product. Like, if somebody doesn't exactly know how to fundraise and you look at their deck and you're like, this is a piece of shit, you could tweak a deck. Like, not all of that is intuitive, but like somebody with like a 10x superpower in something that is applicable to the problem being solved is really most of what you need. I think that's not all what you need, but let's just say it's like Pareto 80/20. Like, that's 80% of it. You can help build a team around that superpower. You can, like I said, like tweak this, tweak that. So that, to me, that's the most important thing. And people with integrity. That's one thing that I feel like I would have never thought I had to emphasize so much, but crypto is still the Wild West, and I do. So we definitely keep like a really sharp eye out for people who are, I don't know, I guess internally you could think of it as a culture fit, but just more broadly, just have high integrity and like passion and like actually, want to build something real, because it's surprisingly hard to find in crypto sometimes.
Definitely. So is loyalty as well, unfortunately. But I feel like people have been, I think that the crypto industry has got a lot of connotations that aren't so good associated with it. But I think any new industry starting out, you have to go through the teething period, so to speak,
Yeah.
and wash out the scammers and bring it back around to like what the technology is, like blockchain technology. It is fundamentally better than what is currently being used, and to take it away from centralized powers to make it decentralized, and community rewards and incentives and all of these benefits that blockchain does bring to businesses, it just blows my mind. And it's just like, okay, yeah, we're still learning around all of that. It's changing very fast and evolving as fast as tomorrow comes, right? And there's so much dopamine associated with the industry. It's wild. It's very emotional driven as well. So, but yeah, anyway, you mentioned fundraising there. And massive congratulations to you for fundraising $10.2 million. That was split between venture capital funding and also community funding. Now, a question that I get a lot from founders in this position is, what should we do, Keira? Should we go for venture capital or should we go to community? Should we do a mix of both? What is your recommendation to any other founders out there, knowing that you have been very successful in hard markets with both of these funding options?
It's a good question. I think the nuanced answer is that it completely depends on their needs, but I think the maybe like the more digestible and the answer is um don't fall into the trap of raising too much too soon. I think there's this moment when you hit a product market fit, or at least have some kind of early semblance of product market fit, where it's okay to start moving much faster. But if you do it too soon, if you raise like too much at too high a valuation too soon, it's analogous to going from standing still to hopping on like a treadmill that's on speed like 30. You don't really have, I mean, like you can kind of dial it down, but pretend there's like no off switch. Like you could click the thing and manually try to dial it down, but you still, like, you jump on the treadmill and you're sprinting right away. And if you don't feel like you have like a really tight sense of product market fit, even if it's early, like crypto is this unique thing where like it takes a ton of time to get past your alpha and beta versions, because like security is so important, so it takes longer. But at least some like semblance of product market fit before you start moving faster. And I do feel like, unfortunately, crypto is a space where people get sucked into that even more often than in other industries, to be honest. So I would probably say um, I'd probably say that. But then beyond that, like one piece, so I say like more general advice, and which, by the way, I'm not I'm not inventing. Like if you look at some of like the old blog posts from Mark Andreessen, it's like really damn clear, and I think that like it still holds true today. Like when like, or maybe it wasn't Mark Andreessen, but I remember like some OG like blog posts, like this is like classic startup advice. I just think that a lot of people forget classic startup and company advice in crypto.
Definitely. And I also think that what you're saying is finding that true product market fit. And one thing that I have noticed, I guess, in crypto over like the last 4 years we've been working in it, is that I think a lot of founders didn't realize that even though it's a new innovative tech, it's still a business, and the purpose of a business is to make money. And if it doesn't make money, then it fails. It's like, okay, you don't need to focus on the vanity metrics of how many followers you've got on Twitter or whatever it might be. But yeah, it's about solving a problem and focusing on just that. And I think rapid iteration with your product to get that feedback really quickly is where you find that true product market fit, you find that traction, you can get that bigger valuation, and you actually have something to stand on, right? I've actually got 1,000 people using this, transacting this much XYZ. The numbers is in the data, really. So yeah, but anyway, going back around, you said that you're super active online, very easy to get in touch with you. And I did go for a bit of a stalk down your feed. And not too long ago, you mentioned that you were not being so active because you have been cooking. And I think it was just today you mentioned that you're back being active because you have cooked. So are you able to give us a little bit of alpha on what you have been cooking? Because I know that you dropped some alpha on the roll up. You apparently also dropping alpha at parties. So what alpha can you drop here around what you've been cooking night and day for the last wee while?
It's funny when you say alpha, just because I tend to be maybe just like too transparent, or I just like say things, and some people are like, you shouldn't just say things. You should tease people more. I'm like, okay, fine. And that, but I guess I guess maybe I do in its own way, if I can't say, if I'm saying things everywhere and then like get constrained in public official channels, and I guess that is a weird way of teasing a lot. But anyway, so the yeah, we've been cooking. We've been definitely cooking. So on a lot of things. So there's the kind of ecosystem thrust that I was talking about before. I mean, we spent a ton of time working with the Blended Builders Club and kind of building out, like, I'll say, infrastructure to support them. Like, for example, we've actually have this in a way, it's a product called Fluent Feedback, where we've actually, with each of the Blended Builders Club apps that are being tested on our testnet, we actually like embed um, well, we work with them to define like what areas of the product need the most feedback, and let's just say the top like 1 to 3 things. So if there's, if it's a game or something like that, maybe it's the core gaming loop and the onboarding experience or whatever. Just like taking some lessons from more of Web 2, like user experience and research, and actually just like codifying that into our test net. So like when people come to the app, like, there's data being collected to then analyze like user behavior. And so the apps can get better to actually make this testnet period like a productive time for the apps. And take in like explicit user feedback too. So we'll embed different types of like forums, et cetera, to actually like get users to channel their feedback in a productive way to the team. So that's just one example of like how well we built that out, right? So like that's one example of how we have kind of been cooking on like internal tools to help the Blended Builders Club. We've also been cooking on another product, a more like commercial product that we're going to be building. Actually, we probably will have released it by the time this is out, to my understanding, so I can actually talk about it. And we're very excited about that. That's probably taken up a good chunk of my time, and probably was the basis of some of those tweets.
Okay, so I think that I've got a little bit of a sneak peek into what you have been building there, and I want to go dive deeper further into that, if that's all right. So,
Yeah.
the way that I see Fluent, and again, it's taken from some of the comments that you have made publicly on X, and it's about incubating all you need for successful in your business. This is butchering your words, by the way. It is about like 1,000 true fans. And from where I look at Fluent and the BBC, the Builders Blended Club that you guys are building out there, is that you incubating 1,000 true builders to build out your whole entire ecosystem. And then is this new app that you guys are launching with Influent going to be like your own Trojan horse to facilitate further growth within the ecosystem? Are you making like a big circular economy of builders, like giving tools for each other? I'm not too sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a good question. So yeah, I mean, this should be out by then, so I can happily talk about it explicitly. So we are building a product called Fluent Connect. And it, as you started to talk about it, it did come from observing problems that our own builders were running into, right? So one thing that's like really hard in crypto is to find your like early adopters, even just like early people to give you like good quality feedback, and ultimately like 1,000 true fans and find your product market fit. So like that's been really hard in crypto. And so we thought about like why is it so hard? Like why is it so hard for like app builders to parse through the noise and find like people who are actually the right fit for them. And we really thought deeply about this, and I think there's a broader problem, which is the crypto especially has over-indexed on attention just so much. And I think so much so that people in crypto use attention as this proxy for like trust and quality, et cetera. And that happens on like the user level, the project level, just every level. It's like this attention as a proxy for like trust and quality is broken. Like that doesn't make any sense. But we've done it because it's just been the easiest thing to measure, and crypto's so kind of narrative driven and all that. But like I think it's like huge flaw in like how we've like distributed value and coordinated. So there's this broader swing that we're seeing from placing so much value on attention to actually placing value on reputation, where I think it belongs, and like that can span different types of reputation, right? So the one way to think about it is like who should I trust and for what? So you could think about reputation on like a universal sense of like, is this person trustworthy or not? You can think of you could think of reputation in a more like contextual, right? Like, is this person a good trader or investor or holder or feedback giver or predictor in prediction markets, like whatever. But you can start to try to build different types of primitives and tools to capture that and give users a better way to find, to give their builders a better way to find users based on, who's the right fit for them. And so that kind of comes into this product that we're building, right? So we're building Fluent Connect, and that builds on top of this primitive called Prince. So I'll actually start with Prince. So Prince is a way to prove you're real and reputable. So it's this, you could think of it as like an aggregator across different identity and reputation primitives in crypto. So things like ethos is like a good example. Like that's just like one reputation primitive. There's also some others that we're really excited about. And you have this like aggregation of primitives that then as a builder you can go and kind of synthesize across, right? And I think that ends up being a much better way to solve for not only things like Sybil, but also identify who could be the right users for you. So like, what do I actually mean by that? So if you were so like I said, Prince captures the different flavors of reputation and identity, kind of aggregates all these primitives together. Fluent Connect is an app that builds on top of that primitive. And so Fluent Connect specifically helps builders connect with real reputable users. So if you're a builder and you come in and you want to use Fluent Connect, you'll be able to say something like, hey, I want to find real users, right, who have a high probability of being human. They're not bots. They're not known to be like assholes or scammers. They have, let's say I'm building a DeFi app. They have a history in being a good trader. And they give good product feedback, that they have a reputation for giving good product feedback. And I need early feedback right now. So I want to filter for those people. And maybe I incentivize them. Maybe I just reach out to them and say, hey, like there's this cool thing I'm building. But effectively, it's enabling builders to connect with what we'll call like real reputable users across those different contexts.
That
So yeah,
makes
that should be
sense.
out by now.
Yeah, so is that what it's streamlining the builders to find their true users, and they found their users depending on the data that has been aggregated on that user. So I would sign up to Prince as a user, and it would collect my social data and my reputation and quantify that somehow, which would then allow me to be connected to the builders and sort of work with them or however they want to launch their ecosystem. But they know that they've already got the right audience. They've already got the eyes. They've now they just need to win the attention. Is that kind of what it's doing?
Sort of, yeah. So one thing to note about Prince is we don't want to be the arbiters of truth for like what's real and reputable. We want to be the aggregator of truth, right? So like, and what does truth mean in a decentralized setting? It actually just means a series of checks and balances. So in other words, like we're not building some kind of composite score that's like, this is your reputation for this and this is your reputation for that. There are a bunch of other primitives that are popping up that do this for both identity and for different types of reputation, right? So like, you can think of like WorldCoin and the thing, and there's some other ones that are popping
It's
up on
kind of
the
freaky.
on the identity side, right? Like what is the probability that this entity is like a human? And then there's stuff more on like you could say like reputation or parasocial reputation side, which would be like ethos. You could even think about different identifiers in Kaido. Like for example, I think like smart followers is the number of smart followers you have, I think is actually like a decent measure of like how much just raw reach you have in crypto, right? And I think that ironically, like it's also, when you have past a certain number of smart followers, it's not good for everything. But I think it's good for also identifying like who has like a reasonably high probability of being a real user. So if you take
Right.
so each one of those things are flawed, but together they're really, really useful. Like they're following their own special ways. Like everything is. There's not going to be a primitive that like completely solves identity and reputation. I think that's where people have misstepped. But in aggregate, as like a multi-factor thing and like a series of checks and balances, I think it gets really, really useful. So for example, if I want to find somebody who is like high probability to be a human, maybe they do have like you know, a world coin, and they have like this new primitive, the thing which we're really excited about, and they have you know, an ethos score above 1300, and they have a, you know, 50 Kaido smart followers. Together, you're like, I could be pretty sure that's a human. So I think so in that sense. We're kind of like an aggregator. Or Prince is kind of more of like an aggregator, and so we don't necessarily want to be like to be the source of truth, or, but rather let the free market decide, right? Like if over time other types of identity and reputation primitives become more effective, and like those become more popular, like, well, we want to integrate all of them and basically give you builders an easy way to use that to distribute value and find their truest fans.
Yeah, okay. So speaking of reputation, can that be synthesized on the client side? Or is it like for me as how does my reputation get not scored, but yeah, synthesized so that I'm getting the right opportunities come my way?
Yeah, so there's a user side of Fluent Connect. So right now, Fluent Connect and Prince are like pretty tightly coupled. I think we're positioning Prince as a primitive, because we don't want to just like own that as part of this proprietary stack. Like we want that to end up being an increasingly on-chain, openly governed, like, you know, ultimately decentralized um, a primitive. And like, but right now, yes, like it's our MVP. We're just like, I think we're trying to be really pragmatic with this, just bringing this this thing to market packaged within this Fluent Connect like commercial product. And so right now, the only way to create your print is through Fluent Connect. And so you would come in as a user, and you would just connect your X. Like that's like the only thing you have to do to create a Fluent Connect profile, and under the covers, like create your print. um, is just connect your X. I think what's interesting is, as an MVP, that just like gives enough data to get started, right? Like you might have an ethos profile, you might have a Kaido profile, you might have like a you know, some of these other I'll say like identity and reputation based profiles, and we'll just kind of round that all up together. And you have an end user interface that we actually tried to make um, simple and fun to start. I mean, I think it's really important that we bootstrap the end user side of this system, right? Because it's only useful for builders if you have like the real reputable users like on the other side. And so the first question is like, how do you bootstrap that? And so we try to make it fun, frankly. Like, I mean, we tried to strike a balance where it's simple enough, yet there's enough like data to actually, you know, present like a decent profile, and it's fun. So we added a little bit of like commentary in there, and we'll see. Hopefully by now we have the feedback that people either liked it or didn't like it, so we can iterate. But yeah, so that's basically what your experience will be as an end user to start. Pretty very, very simple MVP. And then, you know, builders will be, and as you sign up for that, you'll be able to go to like a perks page and basically get different types of you know, benefits, both from Fluent's team, which there's more on that soon, and from the broader ecosystem of projects, right? So like ultimately anybody, the first like wave will be projects that want to come in and distribute whatever they're distributing, like distribute based on reputation. So they might also want to come in and at the very base level, just use it as like a good Sybil mechanism. Or if they want to get more creative with it and say like, not only do I want like real reputable users who aren't assholes, but like I want real reputable users who aren't assholes that have historically been really good traders, or even just like as basic as you know, holders of this NFT, or like, I mean, you can get as like sophisticated as with it as you want. But yeah, that's kind of the first wave, is to like get users excited about this thing, then kind of plug in ecosystem projects to help distribute value based on reputation, and just reinforce this notion of like attention, historically attention being the most important thing to reputation going forward really being the most important thing. And frankly, I think that this is what you can build um, a better, like much better Sybil resistant applications on, right? I mean, think about like Fluent Connect is like the start, but this primitives thing, this Prince thing, we want to take on a life of its own. So over time, like we'd love for Prince to be like the primitive, um, where people are building all types of like reputation based apps on, and you could build a ton on that, like derived from people's reputation, like maybe different types of like loans based on how reputable somebody is. I mean, like this more experimental, but heck, like you could take a loan out against your own reputation, or kind of like a bet on your own reputation over time, which is something interesting that I think like Ethos has experimented with so far, right? Like being able to like long your own reputation. It's like, okay, I'm gonna long myself and then just keep being a good person. So that's more experimental, but like you kind of see where I'm going with it. I think you can end up building this whole ecosystem of like, I'll say, social capital markets and social capital based and reputation based applications.
So much to unpack there, but yeah, is about translating your reputation into something usable. And when you talk about taking out longs or being able to gamble on your own like
This
futures,
is a
and
fun
then we
one.
can like interact into like predictive markets as well, like that would be really interesting to layer all these like DeFi levels with these social applications, and then you like factor in some psychology as well. Definitely some
Well,
new economies are going to be emerging, right?
yeah, and so I mentioned that the funny one to get juices flowing and the more experimental one, but there's some, but I think it could actually be pretty transformative, right? I mean, like, so if you have a primitive like this, what else could you build on it that's just like more very clearly, value add to society? I mean, you could think of better like ways of governing, like, right? Like if you create governance systems where the people who are able to kind of like be the deciding factors in like what happens to a given system are the most reputable people, whether it's because they are like the most trusted people or whether it's because they are the most um competent in a certain domain. So you could think of it as like universal trust versus like a contextual trust of oh wow, these I really trust this group of people, or this group of people is like pretty widely trusted, um and this group of people has like a really strong like weighted believability for the thing that we're like letting them govern. And so I think you can start to get away from like token governance with this, and I think you can build a whole bunch of other types of like governance aspects of applications, right? Like you could even think about different prediction markets and how they get settled. Like, I mean, do you want them to get settled based on kind of like economic mechanisms, or maybe you want like the people who settle a certain prediction market to be people with a certain level of trust that they're going to settle it correctly, right? And so you could build all types of mechanics on a primitive like this.
Yeah, and you're collecting so much data from like all of these different apps across your ecosystem. So you have such a big pool to play with, and data is key when you're trying to find that true product market fit, right? Get that data, iterate, and then refine. So you've built a whole entire ecosystem around that. So yeah, I'm very excited for how things are going to evolve within the club. How many products or how many builders have you currently got in the cohort at the moment? And is it going to be like onboarding every? You said it was just kind of random, really, isn't it? Random onboarding.
So it's a good question. We have the first cohort of 5, if you're talking about the Blended Builders Club, that have
Yeah.
been announced. Some of them have actually been listed for like focused testing on our testnet page. And then there's another cohort that we're cooking up now. We haven't announced any of them yet, but that should be coming, pretty soon. And I think they'll most likely be cohorts of like 5 to 10.
That's exciting. Very cool. So I just want to take the conversation a little bit to you as a founder on this podcast series. I'd like to dive into a little bit around like your own mindset. You've raised over $10 million. You're growing an ecosystem. You're incubating and helping other builders build out in this innovative tech industry, right? So from you as in looking back at your history through the the industry. I actually didn't manage to find you on LinkedIn, but anyway, like, what's your background, your journey into now being co-founder of like yeah this L2 app specific blockchain?
So, my background is mostly in cloud before I got into crypto. So I've done some work in like data science tools. I've done some work in more core cloud infrastructure, like optimizing like Kubernetes environments for well, it's like this is esoteric sounding stuff, but like optimizing like cloud infrastructure environments for like performance and cost parameters, and generally just developer tools. Like I probably spent 5 or 6 years before I even really got started in crypto working on like cloud and dev tooling. And so I feel like that's been a blessing and a curse at the same time, right? Like it took me an extra second or two to learn um, some of the crazier parts of crypto and some more of like the degen trader parts of crypto. But at the same time, I feel like it has allowed us to build a team with a DNA, with more of like a startup, like SF tech kind of DNA that I do think is really lacking in the space. So it's been a little bit of both.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how long have you been building Fluent for?
Almost 3 years. I mean, a few months away from 3 years. Yeah.
That's super exciting. And currently on testnet and looking towards mainnet next year. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, we're on testnet now, and we're moving quickly towards a Q1 mainnet.
What is one of the biggest lessons that you've learned from your community through this testnet phase?
That they give pretty damn good feedback on apps. Like I said, like that's feedback is like a core part of, frankly, our even value proposition for why people should spend their time with us deploying their app on a testnet. I think that's actually like a big problem that a lot of chains run into that we haven't, which is how do you provide value for app builders while you're in this testnet period? Because there's this weird
Mm.
thing in crypto where often the apps are actually like ready to hit mainnet faster than the chains that they might love and they might want to commit to, but they're like, wait, I'm ready. Like I can't just like halt my startup. I have a startup too. Um,
Yeah,
and
I've heard that before
and
for
so the
sure.
question, yeah, and so the question is just like, what's the value add that you're providing them during that period of time? And like that's why we came with this whole kind of like feedback centered testnet thing, because at that period of time, like apps need feedback, and so I think sometimes we find there's like very meaningful overlap between their initial target audience and our community, but like even in the cases where there's not, what we found, and to answer your question, is like our community is pretty awesome, and like they're like pretty damn good at providing feedback. And so like when you deploy on Fluent testnet, you have this like swarm of people who are like super committed to providing like high quality and high signal feedback. And um none of this stuff is like incentivized, like nothing. It's just like people who are really like passionate about it. And I think we do our part to just like hammer that as a core ethos of like Fluent cares about like high quality shit. Like we don't care about like just vanity metrics or volume. And so I feel like the fruits of our labor are starting to show, right? Like I think we are starting to see this like compounding effect of the community, like providing, like getting bigger and continuing to provide value at a bigger scale.
So, how did you bootstrap your community from 0 to 1? Did you go crypto Twitter? Were you going on TikTok? Or how were you actually winning attention to build the community?
It's interesting. I mean, I think the advice to everybody is like it builds slow, but compounding effects are like pretty serious, right? So like if you really want to build like an authentic community, don't don't be discouraged if it starts off slow. There's going to be one person who like really clicks with your thing, and then you're going to have 10 people who really click with your thing, and then you're going to have 50 people who really click with your thing. And then that kind of spreads from there. And like, look, it takes time. Like it takes time to actually like build like a real genuine like human connection. Because like, look, if you don't have, people say the word community a lot in crypto, like if you don't have shared identity, you don't have community, like in my opinion. Like if the shared identity is as thin as we just like, we want to make some, like, I like money, you like money, like that's not a community in my view. So I think you need to have some kind of like actual shared culture, shared identity. And I think that has to start with, as a project, you having an opinion, like having a point of view, like what do you care about as like the founder, like, or the you know, the initial team that's shaping the culture. And just like express that point of view, and then just stick to it. And I think that you'll find that people who resonate will find you.
So why do you care about Fluent?
About Fluent itself,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think it's needed in the world. Like I think that, like, I think what we're building that captures, you know, a number of different values, right? Of just like kind of pragmatism, I think is a really like core one to us. And I think that like it's actually reflected in a lot of things we're doing with the product. I think like product obsession. Like I think one thing that's like really
Mm.
value add that we bring to the space, frankly, is like this like product centric mindset from our Web2 cloud SF roots. Frankly, I could just think that there's like a deficit of that in crypto. And so like I just think that like bringing more of that culture, and like even just like startup execution, and like just like classic like startup practices, like even some of the stuff we're doing with the feedback center testnet, right? Like what is that? It's like not us reinventing the wheel, it's us saying like, hey, look at these successful apps outside of crypto, what types of things do they incorporate? Oh, weird, they incorporate kind of like feedback and user experience research and stuff like that into the product. It's like, okay, cool, we should probably do that in crypto. um, and so I think like why does, I mean, Fluent needs to exist for those reasons alone. And then I also think we have some pretty, I mean, we have an amazing engineering and research team. And I also think that we're bringing some pretty compelling technical innovations to the space that, you know, I think over the next like 5 to 10 years, people will find just an increasing amount of value in. I think right now the biggest bottleneck in the space is just, like I said, product taste, like just like understanding how to take a lot of these like really cool primitives that we've built in crypto over the past 10 years, because there's some good ones, and actually like understand a problem space or an industry enough to like, you know, take that and map those primitives to solve the problem, and then having like the actual like product taste and like design thinking abilities to make it a good experience. And so I think crypto is just lacking those things. And frankly, I think like Fluent's cultural gravity um needs to exist just for that reason.
That is very compelling enough, and I think, like you said, you're creating new innovative tech that hasn't existed before, and bringing your own spin on it, and nurturing and growing an ecosystem that is focused on building uh, for the builders and making it very easy for them. And it kind of makes sense also now learning that you come from sort of a cloud software infrastructure background, and you are now building the tools for your ecosystem to grow. And so I want to know from you, like, having grown Fluent over the past 3 years, there are obviously some wins, some losses, difficult decisions along the way. And you mentioned also taking that SCF San Francisco mindset into building and growing the ecosystem. So, how do you surround yourself with? Do you have mentors that you check in with, or people that you look up to, just to help you stay calm or make sure that you're making those right decisions? Because you're building one of the biggest ecosystems in the most innovative industry at the moment. There's a lot of pressure that comes with that.
There is for sure. I mean, the short answer is it can be hard sometimes. Like it's
Of
you know,
course.
not necessarily the most like, you know, I don't know if everyone like wants to hear that first, but yeah, it can be hard sometimes. And so yeah, I think you kind of answered it too. Like you got to surround yourself with people for different to help you with different things, especially areas where you're weaker, which comes downstream of you spending the time to recognize areas where you're weaker. And like I think that's by itself probably the kind of the highest impact like advice that I could give if that's helpful for people, because I think it's easy to overlook. It's easy to overlook like your own blind spots, but if like take the extra time and you like figure out what the hell those are, then you can actually have and you have the humility to admit it to yourself, then you know you can go and fill those gaps. And I think that's the most important thing, both like you said, from like a mentor and kind of like surrounding like advisory type of thing, but also within your team. Like I think that's important to do that within your team as well. It's like where you find the areas where like your superpowers are over here, and like you know they're not over there, and so okay, like recruit the best people possible who are the best at those other things, and and then trust them, like like, and then actually like remind yourself every day that um that they're really good at those things. Because I mean it'll end up being like obvious to you, but sometimes you get lost in the sauce, and like you know everybody has opinions, and you're like I like this, and you're like wait a minute, like that person, I hired them because they are really fucking good at that thing. Like maybe I should weight down my own believability at that thing. And so yeah, I don't know, hopefully that's a little bit helpful, but at the end of the day it can still be pretty damn hard.
Of course, they say no good thing comes without some good, solid, hard work. And surrounding yourself with the right team members. Again, you're not reinventing the wheel. There's many great founders. Steve Jobs is notorious one for talking around that, you know, surrounding yourself, making sure that you're the dumbest one in the team or in the room to continuously learn and push yourself on the edge to grow in that sort of way. But sorry, not to say but so strongly, but I was saying that, you know, you're out there grafting and wearing all of these business hats, running around all of these different conferences. I know you've probably been all around the world promoting Fluent this year at different conferences. So how do you yourself remain creative, remain motivated, touch the grass, I always say on crypto Twitter, but how do you recharge your batteries?
um That's also hard to that's also hard to find time to. I mean, but you kind of have to force yourself to, right? Like I mean, even simple like walks around every once in a while, I feel like are pretty transformative for to just resetting yourself, even just for that day. Remaining creative is an interesting way to put it, because like I think that that is an area where I've found it can be challenging if you don't really set aside the time for it, because especially when you're like the founder of a project, or like you know somebody in leadership, like you're just pulled in a million directions. And before Fluent, I hadn't experienced that before. And so it's like you get pretty good at context switching, like you get better at kind of just like hopping all around all the time, but like it definitely takes away from like periods I used to enjoy where I could just sit down, go deep into something, and like be really creative. So like I've had to kind of like force myself to carve out like specific time for that. Touching grass, yeah, that's also a tough one that you have to find time for. Frankly, one thing that helps is just incorporating like walks into your work. Like I mean, whether maybe you're taking like calls on the move. Maybe if it's too cold out and you have like a little walking pad or something like that, and you're hopefully like standing desk. I mean, things like that. Just like you know, incorporating it into your work, I feel like sometimes ends up being useful when you can't otherwise find time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I did notice that your Twitter X banner was a nice area of the bush, so I thought that's perhaps how you like to
Uh,
recharge your
oh,
batteries.
I like nature too. Don't get me wrong. Oh, that's another one. That sorry to cut you. Like that's another one. Um, just like like just taking like you know period of time where you really need to focus. If it's more of kind of like an independent thing, like I mean, obviously, if you know there's times you have to focus with your team, you might do an on-site or something. But if there's a really hard problem that you're trying to solve, and it's a little bit more like a you thing, um you know, sometimes I'll just like go fly somewhere warm for it's a few hours away. I'm in New York right now. Maybe I'll fly to Florida and just like, you know, get an Airbnb for like a weekend and just like lock in where or maybe somewhere with nature, right? Like maybe fly to New Hampshire, the exact opposite direction, and just like lock in for a weekend in an Airbnb like myself, and then, you know, go for walks, not by the subway, but instead by trees and mountains and stuff.
That is a nice lock-in. I do have a folder on my Airbnb of different random Airbnbs all throughout America. There's so much variety, like log cabins and ones that overlook lakes, and there's so much
Yeah,
diversity
oh, I
within
love those.
America. I love it. It's so easy to travel around and everything like that. But anyway, so we'll wrap this one up with a last question that I ask every guest is can you cast yourself back to when you were maybe 17 years old, and what would your message be to that version of yourself?
Figure out what you really like and figure out what the market will like you for. Because like they are both really important and but at the same time different things. Like you should definitely like find your passion, but also you should be mindful enough of like you know what that can like map to in the world. And it doesn't have to be work. It just like, you know, finding your passion for like um you know, contributing something or creating something or giving something to the world, I feel like is like what I would nudge myself towards sooner, because I feel like my entire teenage years were just kind of like, you know, not necessarily knowing enough about myself. So I would tell everybody, I would tell my team, my 17-year-old self to just like, you know, take the time, stop moving so fast, and just like, you know, partying and sports and shit like that, and actually just sit down and look yourself in the mirror and figure out who you are.
That is some strong advice, and you're totally right. And but you can't see it when you're that young age. It sort of rips you and
Yeah,
busts. You're going through life with the silver bullet between your teeth and as fast as possible, and probably as chaotic as possible. But it's all character building is what I put it down to. But I think
true.
also some of those words you could reflect back into. So yeah. Anyway. Thank you so much. Where can anybody follow along you and get in touch if they want to do BBC Club, follow along for Mainnet for Fluent next year, perhaps TGE in the works as well, but we will see what comes up. So yeah, how do we follow along?
Uh, Twitter's probably the best place. I'm at Blendino. There's also at Fluent XYZ. I mean, like if you're following along here and you know us, just reach out. However, we're
Yeah.
there. Like I said, I'm terminally online, whether it's Twitter or Discord or whatever. Like you can, if somebody wants to ping us, like we'll see it and we'll be in touch. And I think, you know, I think our team in general is pretty open. Hopefully perceived as pretty friendly, and yeah, I would encourage anybody to reach out.
Cool, cool. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, that's the episode.
Thank you so much.